I'd like to dedicate the shir today to the memory of Yehuda Leib and Reb Nachman, the little 9-year-old boy who was killed last week. And I feel it behooves us to speak about this in terms of such a horrific incident has to awaken some type of response within us. Some of the thoughts that I'd like to share within the shir today are based on a shir I heard this morning driving to Shalayim of a link from Rav Avram Alevi Shor, Baal Lekach V'Alibuv, that he gave on Thursday night in Brooklyn, where he ended the shir by saying when a person's in a comatose state, you need to use shock treatment to try to arouse the person. This incident, this horrible, horrible event, was definitely shock treatment for all of Klal Yisrael and the entire world. And the question is, what is the message for us? I don't think there's one definitive message, but I like to try to speak about some messages that we can learn for our lives. And I like to do this in the context of the Parshat shir that we'll work with today, in Parshat Matot. Parsha begins with the inyanim of vows and the way to break vows, and then it moves into the inyan I want to speak about now, the war against Midian. It goes to, in very, very great detail, the shalal, the booty that was taken from the war, and the laws of purifying different vessels, the whole inyan of putting things into a mikvah to purify them, come from this week's parsha. And it ends with the story of Reuven, Gad, Chatzi, Sheva, Menashe, who want a portion in the land of Israel, and the conditions that Moshe Rabbeinu, in the land of Transjordan, not to go into Israel, and the conditions that Moshe Rabbeinu gives them. Let's take a look at our pasuk, source number 1. Hashem spoke to Moshe, saying, "Take vengeance for the children of Israel against the Midianites. Afterward you will be gathered unto your people." Moshe spoke to the people, saying, "Arm men from among yourselves for the legion, that they may be against Midian, to inflict Hashem's vengeance against Midian." So immediately when we read such a section, keep in mind, we realize what Midian had done. We spoke about this at length last week, where the story happens at the end of Parshat Balak. It really is continuing over 3 parshas. Midian were the women who went out and with Bilam's suggestion to entice the Jewish people, they involved them in znus, in immorality, in Baal Peor, in idolatry. 24,000 members of the Jewish people died, and were it not for Pinchas, who came in with that act of killing Cozbi and Zimri, the Jewish people were at threat of extinction, of annihilation, of God's wrath really being sent against the Jewish people. So here we have the vengeance against the Midianites. And the first question we obviously have to ask is, vengeance seems to be such an anti-Jewish concept. How do we understand Nikom Nikmat, the understanding of taking vengeance against the Midianites? That's the first question we need to understand. The second question we need to understand is the linkage that the Chumash makes, where Hashem says, "Take vengeance for the children of Israel against the Midianites. Afterward, you'll be gathered unto your people." And as Rashi points out, that Moshe Rabbeinu's death was contingent upon this war. What's the relationship between this war and Moshe Rabbeinu's death? As the Merosh Shirim, Rav Rice quotes the idea of the Imre Emes, where he says that this job was like the Kriyat Shema Shel Amita. It was the final act of Moshe Rabbeinu, that he finished Seder Yomo HaAmos. Yes, the last 36 days he taught Torah to the Jewish people, granted. But the final act, where Moshe Rabbeinu took the Jews out of Egypt, and he led them through the desert, and he gave them the Torah. The final act that Moshe Rabbeinu does is the destruction of the people of Midian, being able to take vengeance against the people of Midian. And the question obviously is, why is this linked to Moshe Rabbeinu's death? What's the connection? And our final question is the idea that Rashi brings down in source number 2, that Pinchas was sent out as the Kohen to lead the people spiritually in this war. And the question is, well, why was Pinchas sent and not Elazar, who was the high priest at that time? So Rashi in source 2 brings 2 answers. One is Hamatchil b'mitzvah omrim lo k'mor. One who begins a mitzvah, we tell them to finish the mitzvah. And the second idea is that Pinchas is avenging a personal vengeance. Now, Pinchas is related, comes from the family of Yosef, and Yosef was taken or sold into slavery by the Midianites. So here Pinchas is avenging the act of the Midianites where they sold Yosef into slavery. So we ask ourselves, what's the connection? The fact that the Midianites sold Yosef into slavery has anything to do with what's going on here, that now we're taking revenge on what they did hundreds of years before? It seems to be totally unrelated and unconnected. There are many answers given for our major question of why is this